Are you surprised that they so real quick, I'm recording, so you were just saying, because you homeschooled your kids and there was a lot going on there, and so you kind of lost your mind, decided I got to put them in school. And are you surprised, would you have ever expected this to occur?
Well, I definitely was nervous whether their grades, were they all doing well academically, because that was such a big thing for me to focus on, was like keeping up with grade level and all this kind of stuff, which they're doing fabulous, it looks like, and their personality wise, they're making friends and they're just doing great. So yeah, I guess I was surprised. I was very nervous the first day. Oh my gosh. But,
well, you had your own beliefs and thoughts and fears about it, and would you say that your fears and beliefs and thoughts were true or not?
No, I mean, I let the guidance counselors know. I kind of went through due diligence. Both of my son, who is Asperger's, his teachers are ESE certified, and they're really great. I got a phone call saying how great he was doing, and whatever minor things there were for his transition were really no big deal.
Yeah.
And I think as long as I stay on top of everything, but yeah, and it's fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're doing far better than you anticipated.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, you had a big fear they couldn't handle it, or it was going to be too hard. I remember when we started, you were just afraid that they couldn't handle just the social aspect, and the fact that they're making friends and integrating so quickly. It's like your fear was wrong, and now the truth of who they actually are and their capacity in that social environment is probably very. It should make you realize that you were worried about nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is amazing to see how fast they switched and how
capable.
I don't know. Yeah, they're so capable, and it kind of makes me question, just because I've seen that homeschoolers in general, we get so nervous and paranoid about every single thing about kids' education.
Yeah, and you're projecting that onto your children.
They're feeling that, and so we're all getting together doing things, but the kids are acting up. When they go to school, they're fine. Anyway, yes. Yeah. That's been pretty amazing.
And relieving, I bet. It's just so relieving.
Yeah, it just feels like I have assistance. I'm not being part of, not having to do every single thing myself as far as their whole educational program or whatever.
Well, and think about how limited you are with just yourself, how limiting that is for them. So it's insufficient for them, because you can't create the social environment. You can't create reality for them. Just you. You have to get them involved in meeting strangers and being in strange places and interacting. You can't create that.
Right. That's been pretty amazing to see.
And to let them thrive. I think it's so important. A lot of parents don't realize that what they're teaching their kids is they aren't capable. You're not capable. You can't handle it. You don't think that's what you're doing, because in your mind you're thinking, I'm protecting them. I'm taking care of them. I'm doing the right thing as a mother. But what you're actually doing is you're promoting a sense of inability, lacking of trust. You're isolating them from a reality, which means they are becoming incapable because they're not discerning and learning within it. It's like it backfires, and you're figuring this out early, so thank goodness.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm just so thankful. Even my oldest going into 8th grade is probably pretty capable. I do think homeschoolers tend to actually have their kids sometimes work more, and so he seems to be compared to, he just seems like he's going to be fine. As far as his own
the academic aspect.
To get him where he's at.
Yeah, academically, that's not the issue. It's that social and self-awareness that actually is the limiting factor. You can be super smart, but if you're socially inept, you're not going to get very far.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And they're making friends, and they are,
that's awesome.
with people at lunch and doing their homework and everything. So far, everything's been pretty amazing.
I'm just so happy. I'm happy that you were willing to let this happen, despite your fears and anxiousness.
Yeah. It's been quite a journey. It really has been, but it's been great. And then it also gives me more time to just get them involved in the afternoons with different things so that I'm not already exhausted by the time 3 o'clock rolls around.
And resentful and right, and not just worn out, but
I was so burnt out.
Yeah, and you can see why now too. It's like, well, no wonder anybody would have been burnt out under that type of expectations from a parent.
Yeah.
Maybe 100 years ago it might have been easier because the needs, the academic requirements to function 100 years ago was very much way less.
Right. I had
some
idea that was the ideal motherhood state, was like, I'm going to be in the kitchen, my kids are going to play outside because they're in nature or something, and everything's going to go great. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, you just thought that you had a picture in your mind based on what was painted for you, and you believed that was true, not looking at reality and how it really functions as what you've got to be, working in. You got to work in reality if you want your kids to function in it.
Right.
The key, I think, though, is that you don't want your children to become or to identify by that. That's like, again, it's like saying, well, I know in reality that we live in a culture of thin supremacy and narcissism in many different ways, not just thin supremacy. So I have children functioning in that narcissistic culture, and how do I get them to function in it without becoming it? Without identifying that with those narcissistic concepts that are so worshipped. And because if I can keep them from internalizing it as a form of a way to grade themselves, and then I'm keeping them from being programmed by it. They can live in it, understand it, see it as a program, and not internalize it. They can separate themselves from those thoughts and belief patterns, right?
Yeah, and I'm really thankful that I'm kind of tackling that so that I can help them. So that's
right.
For sure.
Yeah, and it takes the ability for you to do it, for you to be able to help your children do it. So you got it. And what's amazing is that it, for me, came to me in recovery from it. It's not like I had to be brainwashed. I had to be indoctrinated. I had to suffer from it, believe it, hold myself to it, suffer from it, become depressed from it, and then, that whole cycle of extremism. I had to go through the whole process to now be able to say, okay, well, here's what it's like in it. So I'm not ignorant to the inside of it, right?
Right.
And I'm aware of how I got out of it. So it's like, I'm going to help my kids work inside a program without identifying by it, because that's the key, was it's almost like an exorcism. I had to remove it from my identity, but I still function in it. So I don't have to go live in the wilderness because culture is bad. I don't have to remove myself from it. Or even judge and shame it. I can just say, here's what it is. And you should work with it. Just don't identify by it.
Sort of to see it for what it is.
Yeah.
And make a choice.
And to recognize some people actually think it's real. They truthfully believe it. They don't have the discernment. Maybe their parents don't have the discernment to what it is. And you can forgive that and let people be that way.
Yeah.
I often get this with, again, going back to the dieting concept. My daughter, Chloe, who is 17, she is surrounded by girls who've been dieting since 8th grade. since they were 13 and 14. And
Right.
making comments about how crappy they feel about themselves, how ugly their stomach is, how, all this stuff, being surrounded by it. This one friend is trying to be a vegetarian. This other friend is wanting to remove all the gluten and all this other stuff, and just letting them be that way and not feeling like I have to go rescue them from what that is. My daughter Chloe has been listening to these conversations for 7 years now that I have with clients. So to her, it's very obvious what that program is. Clear as day, So the willingness to, her friend who wanted to try to be vegetarian, who has self-admittedly discussed I might have some food problems with Susie or Chloe, has just letting it happen and not judging her, not being like, oh my God, you're super concerned about health, not being derogatory towards someone that has been programmed in there. Believes it.
Yeah. And I do find without the wisdom of innocence, it's so dangerous because you become judgmental.
Well, that's you're not giving it grace.
How to balance, and so you're like, what's wrong with the world? But then you become skewed.
Well, that means you haven't forgiven yourself for being in it, right? It's like, forgive yourself. It is easy to...
Yeah. Well, and that's what that balance has been, to be like, I didn't know any better. So.
No, and neither do the people who are in it. They truly believe this is the right thing to do, that there's something beneficial coming from it. They just don't know that the benefit does come at a cost. So, and they're just unaware of it. And it may not be as radical as my terrible story. They might not be as miserable. They might have more balance. They might not be as extreme in the body image. They might give it more grace. And all of that projects into their dieting with balance and lenience. So they're less likely to have full-fledged eating disorder. They may have some disordered eating and dysfunctional eating, but, so let them do what they're going to do. They'll figure it out. It's not my job to tell them what's right and wrong for them. Anyway, so that's what happens when you, I think, give it grace, when you recover from it. And the way to recover is by giving yourself grace from it. So by giving yourself grace from the programming, from the religiosity of everything that's out there, you end up recognizing the innocence, like you said, of others in it and giving them grace, and just, it's not enabling, but you're not judging. Or I have friends that diet. I have friends that are dieting. They're my friends.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say a word.
Maybe I feel like one of the things that I kind of had to break down was the difference between fun versus glamorous. Because if I get frustrated about my weight, I'll break it down and I'll think maybe I'm losing out on fun. I'm like, no, it's not fun. It's this glamour idea that's somehow going to be more fun, but that's just a false concept.
Yeah, it's a visualization. You're fantasizing. Yeah, it's like a fantasy. Yeah. It's like the best case scenario, and that's what the fun comes from. But really, the fun comes from just the experience, with regardless of the body. Yeah, take the body image out of it. This is where I commonly, repetitively talk about being blind, and you've got to be able to be blind to body image to really get the essence of, like, a wedding. What is the wedding about? Is it about the glamour of the perfect wedding? Is that really what this is about?
Right.
And as well as I do, that glamour came with financial stress, probably a bunch of freaking drama, or what goes in.
Egomaniac.
Yes, the perfection. I have, not to say that's the case all the time, but it's like the more programmed the process is, the more like you're in line with what's to be expected, and that the expectation is rising. It rises, right? Anyways, the glamorizing of it. I love that you brought that up. That is so true. It is so true, and you can feel there's a difference. That is a big... Doesn't that help to go, okay, what am I unhappy about? It was the glamour. It's the fantasy.
Yeah, I'm trying to start breaking stuff down. Like, I'll observe it, and then I'll try to break it down, and then see what's underneath it all. And I've found all kinds of things, like abandonment. Like, why would it even feel... Like, if you felt like your weight maybe is a loss of attractiveness. Okay, well, why is being attractive so important? Are you going to have a mate, or you're just being left alone or something? It's like, so what? Okay, I'm alone with some cats, fine. Like, and then I'll just accept whatever it was that made me think somehow.
Yeah, I love it. You're going into the fear.
By society.
Yeah, well, I remember.
It's true.
Well, and even if it is, because the fear, it comes from a belief that it is true. Otherwise, you wouldn't have fear, right? So your logic realizes, oh, shit. I mean, seriously. This is so not true, but your emotions believe if you're not physically attractive, you're not worth a relationship. No man will be attracted to you because it's so superficial, right? And that's a sign that that's brainwashing, right? That a man is only attracted. And are you supposed to be attractive to a man? I mean, is it really about getting the man? Are we really supposed to be a slave to what their needs are? And those needs, are their needs coming from a programmed pornographic concept of sexuality that doesn't take into account your humanness? I mean, imagine you have a daughter, and your daughter now needs to be programmed on the outside to meet a standard that her future boyfriend thinks is beautiful from the porn that he watched in childhood, in adolescence, and what's being programmed into his brain.
Right.
That's disgusting. Yes, but, it's like, okay, hold on. You're basically giving that relevance by believing it. I'm worthless if I'm not thin. I am worth less if I am not thin enough. Even if you're not thin, it's not thin enough. Therefore, I am, I'm worthless to a man. Well, what if the man that you are wanting to be with loves you for who you are, and who the physicality of the body isn't as important as you're making it? Because you're the one that makes it important.
Right. Yeah, it is amazing how the programming, once you start to look at it, you're like, oh gosh.
Well, it stems from misogyny. It's like this whole concept of male dominance, male superiority, and a woman has to prove herself to become a mate, to be worthy of relationship, and just to prove herself by having sex and being sexually attractive, not being a human being. The weird thing is that it changes. It's like girls in adolescence, girls in childhood are allowed to be who they are. You are endless. You have endless possibilities. You can be a policewoman. You can do everything and anything you want. You can be a doctor. You can be a teacher until you're 12 or 13 years old. And now you have to be a hollow, empty body of sexuality for some man, for a pedophilic concept of who you should be. You have to make someone's penis really hard. And that means that's your worth. Now, you don't have the options of the other because you have to hone in on your looks. All of that freedom goes away.
I think that means that's femininity. Like, they sort of have that false,
yes, they do.
Femininity idea. And on top of that, you should also, of course, be a successful businesswoman.
I know.
So you better get your manhood on, too.
Well, and that's one of the theories out there in the feminist perspective of it is that as women have had more and more rights to work and to support themselves, body image has become more and more focused. And I don't know if this is conscious, right? But it's like the misogyny aspect of it, the men and the women who believe in that concept become more fixated on having to maintain something like thin supremacy, which means you have to starve yourself. So if you are that distracted, there's no way you're going to be able to compete with people who don't have to, live with scarcity around food. I mean, it's really, again, it goes back to that first hierarchy of need. How are you going to reach these states of success, which require that you don't have to forage for food and hoard food? Those states of consciousness, they're not, if you have to constantly deprive yourself, your brain will always be fixated on food. Therefore, you're not going to have the energy to actually be successful and compete with men. Oh my God. Am I making any sense? But that's the theory. It's like when you're starved of thoughts. And that's very true. Go into your eating disorder and your dysfunctional eating. When you are trying so hard to be thin, you're useless. You're literally useless.
Right.
And starved. All to get promoted. Or, am I doing it right? Am I good enough? Is it good enough? Do I meet the sexual symbol that you need to make your penis hard?
It's crazy.
So that you can feel that I'm a good enough wife for you to show around, so all the men out there vie for you, thinking that you're a better person than me. I mean, it's the misogyny, it's the narcissism, that belief system it's been there for a few generations. And the sad thing is women are the ones that actually, it's the women that are continuing it, not the men.
Right.
It's the women. And there are men who are, I ran into a male chauvinist, misogynist this weekend, actually. He was so derogatory. It was shocking, actually, but he's like a troll, internet troll. Anyways, but he was live. And they do exist. They do. Yeah. And a lot of the clients I work with are married to that type of person. For real. Yeah. Super controlling, super arrogant, super derogatory towards women, especially derogatory towards women's looks. Constantly judging women and how they look and their face and their makeup and their hair and their clothes. And oh my God, constantly making, as men. Not, and they're clueless. But again, that does exist. However, the biggest promotion and sustaining part of this culture are women who teach it to their children, their daughters, their sons. The women are the ones that are the problem.
Right. Yeah, that is just so nutty.
Well, it's generation. I mean, think about your parents. Think about, they just never questioned it. That's just they were so limited in their knowledge, intelligence, access to information, deeper thoughts. It was always just, you're told what to do. You do what you're told, and you don't talk about anything. So it's hush, hush. You better lose weight because no man is going to want you. That was such a generational thing. That was like a normal household conversation in the 1960s, 50s.
Yeah.
70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. I mean, it passes down,
Yeah.
And so you're just waking yourself up. You're like, you're just now becoming aware of the truth of your essence, right? You can feel the separation between the concept and what the truth is. You are just now feeling the separation. The difference, right? That concept versus reality. Concept versus truth. And so once you feel that separation, all of a sudden, you have the option of choosing differently, thinking differently, responding differently. There's a lot of freedom in that because you now have a choice around, should I feel bad about this or not? Before you didn't have a choice, you just felt bad about it. Never questioning that there might be an alternative about how you feel about yourself. Well, how you feel about the body, because you have a separate, again, because you are beginning and you have been getting a sense of the truth of yourself, right? Separate from the truth of the body.
Right.
The body concept has less influence on how you feel.
Yeah, and I realized that because I probably repressed a lot of feelings and I have to go through a surrendering process, that I just have to give the whole thing grace because I'm also not really in a place where I understand what it means to love the body enough to always maybe treat it well or certain things.
Pause. Hold on. That thought process. How do you know what's treating the body well? What is that?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Well, but the diet industry does. The diet industry knows what that is. So you can go to the diet industry and they'll tell you how the right way to do it is.
Yeah.
So that's where you have to really question even the concept of treating the body well and what that is. How much does the body really need? And, 200 years ago, how did they know how to treat the body well without all of our current knowledge about all this stuff? Like how many thousands of years have the human body survived on its own without treating it well? I mean, this is beyond let's wash your hands, you know,
Right.
drink enough water, listen to your body. How much do we really need to intellectualize this? I mean, the problem is...
I see what you're saying. I had this idea that I was somehow going to get to the other side, and then all of a sudden I would, like, love my body so much that I just care for it like it was just, you know, this prized possession, of course.
Okay, notice how that thought process is still fixated on the body.
Okay.
So it's like... To love the body so much, you mean like infatuate yourself with it, that it's the only thing you think about, continuously keeping on going? Or you love it so much you trust it's doing what it's supposed to do and you don't have to think about it at all?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Do I really need to think about it? Or can I trust that it's inherently smarter? From 360 different degrees at all times that are occurring, my brain can only think linearly, one thing at a time. So how do you know what's right for it? Besides, you know, logic. There's logic. Eat when you're hungry. Eat a variety of food. Wash your hands. Right. When you're tired, go to sleep. Drink water. It's very basic. How much do we need to love our body so that we're infatuated with it enough that I think about it all the time, and every decision I make is about loving the body? Do you hear that?
Yeah.
That was sold to you. That was sold to you.
Overeating, which I'm still doing,
well,
which I think is because of the repression.
Probably. I'm seeing your
emotions.
Yeah, you're still fearful about what you can't handle. So as you handle things or allow them to be, you witness them, allow them to exist, and you release them. The food consumption is a way to repress, right? It's a way to hide. It's a way to cover. It's also a way to reward yourself. Again, there's a lot of ego attached to it. So the concept of treating the body well, you do have to really look at, are you looking at the body from a codependent relationship? So it's my rescuer. So food is my rescuer, right? And the body then becomes who, you know, it's like I'm going to eat food even though I know I'm not hungry and it physically hurts the body. Again, separate who you are from the body. It's not your body.
Okay.
That's important.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going through such a large paradigm shift because I kind of started to understand what you talked about when you go out the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Like
that's
that
sucks.
Then the ego is like, oh, well, I didn't really want that. I just wanted to, like, miraculously get better.
Yeah, without
so now you're like, question whole ego. So that was interesting. And then it's been like this paradigm shift in all areas of my life as I start looking at some of the other things I was engaging in. And I was like, I feel so lost. I'm lost. And now I'm like, okay, I'm having my come to Jesus moment now. So now I'm in my come to Jesus moment, and I'm like, okay, it's time to really begin the surrender process. And then, of course, I'm hungry. I'm like, okay. So I'll go back and forth with, like, deciding to break down the emotion, or maybe just feeling like I want to eat. Because then I was realizing, like, I was involved in a lot of this New Age stuff that was so negative and judgmental and just yuck. So I was like, I have to let go of all sorts of things.
Well, if you're no longer coping or trying to hide from what you're afraid of, what happens to the need for that New Age stuff? I mean, do you really need it? Or is that just another form of coping?
Yeah, that's all it is. It's like, let me get my chakras. I mean, it's like all forms of coping. I realized that I was just running from one rabbit hole to another of coping mechanisms. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm so tired of all these.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you're using this stuff as a coping mechanism, it's enabling. And you don't even need for example, it's like you can go into religion. Does it mean that the religion is malicious and enabling you, or are you using it for that? You know, this is where you have to be bluntly truthful with yourself. You have to be willing to tell the truth to yourself, even though it'd be so much easier just to convince yourself that it's better to repress it, right? You have to be able to say, I'm afraid, and just be truthful. I'm not hungry. Well, tell the freaking truth. Because if you tell the truth, then you're not going to eat. So, yeah, you're lying to yourself in there. You're just not being...
There's like
yeah, you're lying. You're not telling the truth.
Overwhelm that kind of comes, and then I'm not stopping. Instead, I'm like...
No, you're not telling the truth. If you're not hungry, and this did help me in that very beginning. It's like, if I'm not hungry, I have to tell the truth, because I can no longer afford to lie. That is enabling me to not face what I'm not been facing. So I will tell the truth and force myself to be vulnerable to what I'm afraid of and actually face it. And it's like head on. It's like being in a, it's like having drama with a relationship. It's like, who wants to feel vulnerable and tell the truth when you've been lying? It's not a good feeling. It's tons of dissonance, right? Yeah. I had to do that even though no one was overseeing me. Because that's the thing with this process, eating to hunger. There's no oversight. I'm not going to be that, right?
Right.
And so the truth is, if your heart is in this place that is wanting recovery, you will do it without my suggestion, because you want that recovery. And you can feel, by lying to myself in this moment, I am postponing freedom. Every time you lie to yourself and you eat without hunger, or you go and remove food to compensate, any of that, any type of dieting, any type of exercise with the idea that you're removing consequences, all of that, you are postponing your freedom, and you are spreading out the poison. So do you want recovery or not? It's like every single time you lie to yourself, and you know it, you're not recovering. But at some point, if you want to recover, what do you have to do?
Right.
So you either do it now, or you just keep on living in hell. Which one do you want? You know?
Yeah. It feels like it's like Pandora's box, because all of a sudden you realize like you're repressing. And there's all these belief systems. There's just nothing but junk in the closet.
I know. And you know what it feels like? It's like, are you willing to find out if your husband's cheating?
Right.
That's what it feels like. Because if I find out he's cheating, there's a major change that's about to happen. Like huge evolution that will occur. Well, do you want that evolution, or do you want to stay in the dark?
Right.
And so for me, it was so catastrophic. And this is the downside of it not being that bad, is you can just draw the sucker out, because you're really not that miserable. It was that or suicide. So for me, it was, I have no alternative. Either I face this and open myself to what feels like it's going to kill me anyways, or I just kill myself. So it's the same thing. So I remember actually thinking, why don't I just open myself up to the truth first? And I always have the option of suicide versus never even finding out and just killing myself in fear of what it is. At least if I find out, I am giving myself an opportunity to then address. And in doing so, I had a massive shift of consciousness that I've never returned from that ever.
Yeah.
So that's really what you're avoiding.
Yeah.
Just tell yourself the truth.
It's like I'm beginning to understand, like I'm really getting to that place where I think I'm at the point where it's time to just do it. It's like all the time, every day, just keep doing it.
Every time, all the time. Tell the truth, live in the truth, be in the truth, accept the truth.
Like we've covered, like I have a pretty good idea that most of the stuff I'm going to find is bogus belief systems and just negative emotions that are normal anyway. So
yeah, but you've never really let them come out. You've never really experienced sadness, grief. You've never really allowed that to be and exist without shame, judgment, or feeling sorry for yourself. So in this case, it would be like if you have grief, you're going to experience the grief and you won't feel sorry for yourself. That's different.
Right.
That's removed from the idea it should be different or better than that. It's like, no, this is life. I'm now experiencing my humanness, and I believe it is good as it is. It's perfect as it is. So grief is perfect as it is. I don't have to feel sorry for myself for experiencing grief. That's like feeling sorry for myself for being alive, for having this human experience. That's narcissism, right? So keep that in mind. It's like I'm about to open myself up to humanness for the first time, and I don't feel sorry for myself because of it.
Right. And I'm safe.
Well,
I cannot be safe from when you think about it.
Well, I'm capable of experiencing it because unless I'm capable, I'm gonna, be completely dissipate into thin air because I won't have an existence. It's like, that's what it feels like. I know that sounded weird, but that's what it feels like. That if I experience this grief or sadness or loss, that it will kill me. It will obliterate me, the concept of me.
Uh-huh.
Then there's no there. There will be no there in my soul. Like there's no soul. That's what the fear actually is. If you really work it down, there is nothing there. And you have to be okay with it. What if there's no there? Well, guess what? That's none of your business. It's not like you created the nothingness. Oh my God, I don't know if I'm making sense.
Like you'll be empty of desire, you'll be empty,
or
it'll just
anything.
be like emptiness.
Correct. Like there's nothing there. And that's the fear, that there might be nothing there. Well, guess what?
It might be blissful.
Correct. And it has nothing to do with you. What if it's not you? What if you're just stardust?
Yeah. So...
It's such a, for me, it's been, for at least the experience that I am experiencing. It has been, beyond words, infinite. What that opens you up to is infinity. Because you're not conformed to one thing. So you're constantly open to life as it manifests, as it blossoms, as it exists. You don't even need to know. So you can just be. It's like being a kid again. I just am. It just is. Why do I gotta put it in a hierarchy of bad and good, and then have all the pressure to do something about it, or not do anything about it, and then feel bad that I'm not, but bad that I'm.
Like I don't have anything I have to strive for. There's
Nothing.
no goal I have to reach. I'm just
No, well, and for me, it's like I will just be and exist from that space, and then as things come up, that's how I feel. I may not be the creator of those feelings. It could be evolution. It could be the animal brain. It could be whatever it is, but it is what it is. And for me to sit here and say that I should not have that, you have to have that, to believe that. I shouldn't have that. To believe that, you believe you're God and should know what it should be. You're basically saying the way I am and the way everything exists is wrong. To do that, you would have to be the creator of all existence throughout all of time.
Yeah, and I could see how even for somebody who's struggling with whatever I'm struggling with, when I look at David Hawkins' work, above 200 is good, below 200 is negative. So then you're negative feeling. Not good, and I'm sure he didn't mean for it to be that way.
No, if you actually study his work, that's the animal brain, that's the human survival mechanisms. It takes millennia for those to be there. They serve a purpose. They're actually very important, and the idea is to transcend them so you can experience a different way of being. It's not bad or good. So you'd have to study his work. That's the problem if you're stuck in those spaces that are survival oriented. You can't even conceive what he's writing. Everything is being distorted into your position. So and you know,
his book Letting Go right now. So I started it recently. So I read a couple of chapters. So I don't know.
I love his work. I just I appreciate it so much that I didn't need his work to recover. You know, he didn't have his work done for him to be where he's at. He's just trying to verbally explain from a linear way of describing things, these concepts, you know.
Yeah, I think I can see how it's just my fear of facing it it feels so strong and when it comes up in resistance. So I just have to stand my ground and be like, I'm gonna just whatever this is, it's really not even that bad or whatever.
Well, what if it feels that bad? I don't know if I would recommend you try to convince yourself it's not that bad. I know for me, when those feelings came up, it felt like I was going to die.
Right.
So if you actually allow them to be there, what if that concept that you thought ahead of time is super false? You just have to let it become what it is and surrender to it. And if it's going to kill you, you let it kill you. That was something that I remember becoming aware of as I was experiencing it, was that this is the feeling I've been running away from my whole life. I've had this feeling of being murdered or going to be murdered. I've had this on so many levels since I can recall. The need to fix, the need to remove. And it's like, because if I don't, that feeling's going to come up. And the feeling hasn't always been that intense, but it's always been there. And it's like, and I remember thinking, so if this feeling is meant to be here, and let's just see, and it's constantly coming back, what if it is my life's calling is for it to kill me, override me, take over? What if that is the truth of my life and I'm repressing it, running away from it? So I'm going to be miserable until the moment I face it. Because what if that's the destiny in this lifetime? What if that is ultimately the destination of this lifetime and I'm trying to change destiny? The assumption was that it was going to kill me. Like murder. It feels like a bad thing outside of you. Feels like you're going to die. And it's going to be like horrible. Dismemberment. Just something it's very grave, very bad. This is ominous. Like this ominous thing that's coming after. It feels like the Grim Reaper. Yeah. I'm being chased by the Grim Reaper.
Right.
And what if it's my time to die?
It begins to rise and you're like, I don't know what this is.
Well, you go into denial. So what I realized is that, that's being in denial. You're lying to yourself. So again, this came to me was that, okay, this Grim Reaper, if this is the truth of my destiny, I can no longer be in denial about it. I will allow destiny to manifest. I can no longer fight, defend myself, hide, because my whole life is being defined by everything I got to do to hide myself from this feeling.
Yeah. And do you just ask the feeling, like, what is this, basically?
I surrendered and allowed, it was as if I was allowing myself to get murdered. Limp. So when you say there's that feeling I'm repressing, I'll just convince myself it's not as bad as it is. Does that sound right? Does that sound like sound advice?
It doesn't sound like that's logically or realistically.
It's not real sound. Exactly. It's like, you convince yourself that it's not that bad. Well, guess what? When you stop repressing that feeling, it could get bad. For me, it got horror story. It was like being dismembered, heaved off a cliff. It was so terrifying. The only way to do nothing was to visualize myself allowing my head get chopped off without fighting. in total submissive, humbly surrendering. That it was like complete and total, thy will be done. I'm done with my will. Thy will be done. I'm done with my will. Because my will has been to run away from this feeling. And if this feeling is here, it means that there's something, some destiny in it. There's maybe some, I don't know what it is. Maybe this is God's will. And I am fighting God. Why can't I just, if I am meant to die of a heart attack, of whatever it is I'm dying from in this moment, however it comes across, because it all feels like it's in my brain. Because it's not literally here. I'm not literally seeing the Grim Reaper wanting to gouge my eyeballs out. That's just my thoughts and my feelings. And it felt real.
Yeah.
So, however, I don't exist. If I do not exist, that is not my will. I'm not the creator of this life. I'm just here. You hear the surrendering in that. I am laying down my life and self-concept for whatever the truth is. I'm not going to play God anymore. I'm not going to tell God that this is wrong. If there is a God. Even if there is one. Because in my mind, I couldn't even rely on what that concept was. I just had to go into the space of, if there is one, I'm going to let the will of that occur. I'm done being or having my own idea of what I need. It's because I cannot deny that this feeling of ominous, you're going to die, is here. It's there. It's a feeling and it's there all the time.
Right.
I'm hiding it from it. I'm denying it, repressing it. And the truth is that it is there. And so the longer I deny that it is there, the more I'm overriding destiny, whatever that will is. And it could be the worst feeling you'll ever experience physically. Worse than pregnancy. Worse than labor and delivery. Like, worse than any physical pain. Physical pain, actually, to me, is tolerable. I say that after having a baby, right?
Right.
Right now, I actually have a slipped disc in my neck. Right here. This whole arm is radiating pain. You know what? You know what was worse? Surrendering the soul and the emptiness to what's not there.
Right.
That was excruciating because you're willing to die. It's like committing suicide voluntarily to the will of God, if there is one. I didn't even expect mercy. I wasn't praying for mercy.
Yeah.
That's like feeling sorry for yourself.
There's this feeling that comes up, you don't know what it is or why or whatever, so it's like...
Denial.
So negative.
Why can't you just let it arise? What if that is the will of the life that you're in? Could be past karma that you have to address. Face it.
Okay.
And stop feeling sorry for yourself. I think that was a big block for me too. Again, I didn't know it was a block until after I experienced it, right? And I was like, oh, that was me trying to continue to repress it, feeling sorry for myself.
Yeah.
And so the moment I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and again, it's and not praying for mercy. I'm not praying for mercy. I just, what it is will be done. And I allowed it to occur, and I became a limp noodle to reality. That's when I realized those things were denial. So this is what I find really fascinating too, on a side note. A lot of what I'm aware of, I didn't know and then recovered. I went through all this and the knowledge came afterwards. Oh, that's what that was. Oh my God, because it was almost like I transitioned into a bigger space. I don't know how else to describe this. So it's almost like you go into this space of infinite potential and realness, and And from there, you can tell that what you were in was in this tiny little box. You didn't know it until you left it.
Yeah.
So it's not like I knew there was this infinite space of reality I'm going into. You don't even know. It's like, oh, I didn't even know this exists.
Because it does feel like, it's like you know that once you face that feeling, like all your ego issues are going to have to dissolve at the same time. You're not just going to dissolve the piece that you think you would like to change.
Yeah, you're going out the bottom. You're going out the bottom, dearie.
You're just going to go right out.
Yeah, because it all becomes a lie. It's all an illusion. And that's what you become aware of. Is like even feeling sorry for yourself is like defending the illusion. You're playing God. You're telling God that this is all wrong. Well, what if it's the way it is?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of like, I probably is. I'm sitting at that door. And then it sucks, too, because I know everything is crap at this point. I'm like, that's crap. This is crap. I'm just sitting here and crap. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, you're just sitting in, you're postponing it. It's almost like, why are you procrastinating this? Well, I understand because there's feelings here that you'd have to face.
Well, there's some illusion that somehow it's all going to get better miraculously. There's like some answer, which is like ridiculous. I know there's not.
You have to go through it. Yeah.
And there's an endless number of rabbit holes that are never going to go to nowhere. So it's like, you know, they're not going to ever.
I think sometimes people assume too that when they're working with me that they're just I'm going to tell them something and that thought is going to do it for them. No, the clients that have had the same miraculous kind of awareness, and then all the knowledge comes afterwards, they at some point have that, like, you can call it the dark night of the soul, the willfulness to surrender everything, including their sob story of needing mercy, all that shit. They do it on their own, and because they're led to it. You know, I might lead them to it, but they're led to it internally because they are so desperate to recover. They want that freedom that they are willfully dying. It's like a willful death. The death of what you thought, the death of this space that makes you think that your whole life, that it owns your life, and without it, you will become non-existent. That is the clutching of the ego, right? The survival brain. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's how we're in a human body today, that clutchingness of the ego. You know, but is it really a way to exist if there is no real threat? The real threat, it's in your mind, and you know, but your brain can't tell the difference between a perceived threat or a real threat. So if you perceive it as such, your brain is responding that way. So in essence, what you're doing is you're willfully dying from your perceived threat. And what happens is you realize after the fact, doing nothing about it, it all of a sudden becomes clear that it was a perception. It was an illusion, because you get beyond it, and it's like the brain changes. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, that was such a lie. My whole life was stuck inside this lie, but I thought it was real. And the willingness to surrender breaks beyond the animal brain, because now you're willing to die. So what's the point of survival mode?
Right, yeah. And I can see how right now I'm surrendering a lot of like small things that rapidly, it feels like. So I feel like my paradigm is definitely shifting, but I'm still leading up to like a big letting go. But there's a lot of like little letting goes, being like, well, that was crap. That was crap too. That was crap too.
And all that is important. All of it is. It all is leading you to a point of full surrender, or at least the willingness to then face what's underneath a lot of it, right? As you eliminate a lot of this stuff. I would say in closing here, it would be to your advantage to be unwavering around the truth you tell yourself.
Yeah.
Tell yourself the truth. If you are not hungry, the answer is no. Do not allow yourself to hold on to any armor. Visualize, I'm holding on to armor. I'm wearing armor. I'm holding on to a shield from a reality that's occurring here.
As a rescuer.
Correct. From a reality here that I'm trying to deny. If this thing that I'm trying to defend and deflect and deny is real and true, and it's been there and it keeps on coming back, why am I denying it? Why won't I just allow it? So get rid of the armor, get rid of the shields, get rid of your bow and arrows, bury your guns, and be buck-ass naked to the reality of what this is, and allow that will to occur. Stop playing God. Okay, I think this is the best actual description I've ever had. I'm glad we got this on camera.
This is good stuff.
Well, all I'm doing is recalling my own experience and saying, okay, this is what it happened. This is how I had to feel. These are that out-of-body experience. It changed my everything permanently. It was permanent.
Yeah, because you didn't have the body there as that rescuer either.
I was done. I had to, because I was willing. I was going to murder the body because it was the only source of survival, but yet it required this enslaved, hollow soul with no life. Right? Yeah. So I had to surrender it. I had to surrender the body. I have to surrender all concepts of Robin. Part of this came to me as I was reconciling and preparing to commit suicide. These are things that if you were truly going to die, you'd actually start to process through. So I fortunately went through death without having to physically die.
Yeah.
But I willfully surrendered to what I was, it's like I was trying to maintain my freedom from all of that. I was repressing all of that fear, anxiety, shame, all of that shit by focusing on my body image as a way to control, maneuver, repress all of those feelings. And so because it required that enslaved and trapped kind of miserable hell type of way of existing, micromanaging food, constantly, all I thought about was food and exercise and calories and burning in my size and my shape and, all that.
Yeah.
I got to a point of suicide. And at that point, when it was real and true and I'd made the decision, so it wasn't just suicidal, I had decided to commit suicide and started the grieving process. It was very beautiful. It was very peaceful. It was very sacred to me. Still is to this day. That was when I started to witness all of this. It was actually surrendering who am I. I'm grieving this concept of Robin. I'm grieving the sadness and the sorrow. This is like horrible. What has happened to the essence of the child that I feel that's here, that is so innocent, that didn't mean harm, that this is an end to that. And so you can see how then you're surrendering everything anyways. And in the end, because you're so afraid to face what fear is there. And I realized, well, if I'm going to shoot myself in the head, that's going to require I face the fear of shooting myself in the head. Which is essentially the feeling I'm repressing by doing all of this exercise and obsessive compulsiveness. So if I just allow myself to witness and feel these feelings, I feel like they're going to murder me anyways. I'm doing the same exact thing as actual committing suicide. It's just passive suicide versus active suicide. And now I see it was the suicide of the ego. It was the suicide of the survival mechanism. It was suicide of the concept of Robin that had to be religious and perfect. Right? It was like the suicide of all false concepts of me. That I didn't, and with that came the truth. And again, it was like this moment of willfulness to die. but not feeling sorry for myself or asking for mercy. It was, if this is thy will, I allow it to be, because I can't function anymore in my will.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to you from context after the fact. I didn't have this before I went through it.
Right. You just went through it.
I was just desperate and done.
Yeah, I can see how, and I can see how, because you brought other people through it, so you don't have to get to that point necessarily, but you do have to be done with playing games with yourself.
You do, and you do have to some point be willing to face what you don't know.
Yeah.
What you don't know. And allow it to come to you, even if it's scary.
Yeah. I can see how I would almost think like the fear of being like hedonistic, or all of a sudden I'm not going to care about nothing anymore. My life, I don't know, like, I guess that's probably religious programming.
Yeah, it is.
That's religious programming.
It is. What happens is you actually become autonomous and you become independent in what brings you joy here.
Yeah.
Because we are human and we love pleasure. So it's like, well, now I get to decide what I get to create with this life. What brings me pleasure, you know? So it's not like you have nothing and you're not inspired. It just means now you're independent. It's now you have your free will. You're no longer, you're now self-navigating and self-directed. So you are now a free agent. So that is the part. So what you're saying is a fear based on brainwashing. And you caught it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the movie The Mask. When he puts the mask on, all of a sudden he just starts saying everything. You're like, what if I just, like, what's going to happen?
Well, I know for me, I remember thinking, well, I know what is true. So there is a sense of truth. And that truth is that I'm really kind. I don't mean harm to anybody. So I can rely on that.
Yeah.
That no matter what this life has in front of me, I will always stay true to that integrity forever. That's like telling the truth all the time, all the time.
Okay.
That is good enough for me, because that's the only thing truthful anyways. So I can go back into brainwashing and programming, but either way, the truth is that my heart is what's really where I'm at anyways. So I can be brainwashed with a concept of being better than I am, but the truth is I am what it is. And the concept of being better than this is really quite ungodly, because I am what I am, and I had nothing to do with creating that. It is what it is. So why isn't that good enough? Why do I have to improve upon that when that's the truth?
Right. And I can see, too, how we can be programmed to think that we're dark, we're evil, we're just, these terrible beings. If we didn't have this control, it's going to all, go haywire or something for us. And that's not really true either.
No, and there might be some people that are unevolved and psychopaths, and they need to be in jail, and maybe they need to memorize what not to do because they don't have a sense of empathy. Those people do exist, but that's not. Is that you? Do you need to treat yourself like you're a psychopath?
No.
So why are we treating the whole entire community as if everybody's a psychopath?
Right.
And needs to live in a cage of control.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. So I can see how I probably is religious programming I'm kind of working through at that point. So, okay.
All right, let's get you scheduled for